Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody watching. Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, we're going to be touching on several topics related to the gold and silver market, several very pertinent topics considering the times that we are living through. We're going to talk about legal tender laws, how they pertain to the precious metals, the current trend among various states towards the remonetization of gold and silver in one way or another, and what all of this means for us gold and silver stackers. And with me today to discuss these topics and make some sense out of the current precious metals landscape is Jeremy Cordon, the CEO and founder of Goldback Inc. And we will be getting into some specifics about Goldbacks themselves in this episode as well. So hello, Jeremy. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining me today. To get started, why don't you just tell us a bit about yourself and your background? Introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure, and I appreciate you having me. So my name's Jeremy. I've been trying to make gold and silver a more useful money for most of my career. We've tried to do that with crypto projects and digital projects and vaulting projects. And so far, by far, the most successful thing that we've done is this Goldback project, where we're starting to see a huge amount of adoption for people that really want to use gold as money.
Yeah, gold. We're going to talk a little bit about a quote that you have on your site there later from JP Morgan about how gold is money and everything else is just credit. But while we're on this subject, and I know this is something that you are something of an expert in, we're seeing a transition to these legal tender laws in many states at the moment. About 23 states right now are looking at one version of legal tender law or another. And we have covered on this channel a few. We've got Texas. They're looking at creating a gold-backed digital currency. Some lawmakers there proposed a bill for that recently. We have Idaho. They are looking at a bill that would allow their state treasurer to allocate funds to physical precious metals, both gold and silver. Missouri and Arkansas, they're passing laws right now to enhance legal tender status of both gold and silver and eliminate sales tax on that. And then at the federal level, we've even had last year, Representative Alex Mooney, he proposed the Gold Standard Restoration Act. Now, I don't think there's much chance of that passing or a return to the gold standard at the federal level. But at the state level, they seem to have the right idea right now. So what can you tell us about this transition? What does it mean for your average stacker? And really just what is legal tender in the first place? What do these words mean?
Sure. No, and this is, one of my introductions into the space. My business partner, Larry Hilton, was actually the man that drafted the Utah Legal Tender Act in 2011. So he wrote the bill and pushed it and got it through the legislature here in Utah. Most of these state laws, or many of these state laws that recognize gold and silver as legal tender, are modeled after his law because he was the first person to do it. And that was my introduction to him, right? So, this issue has been very near and dear to us. A lot of these are laws that are removing sales tax. Like in Arkansas, they just removed sales tax off gold and silver. And we're seeing a lot of interest at the state level. One group that I'm talking to is the Sound Money Defense League. And the Sound Money Defense League, they're a nonprofit. They push a lot of these laws. We try to support them. What they're coming in back and they're telling us is that a lot of state lawmakers are approaching them with goldbacks. And they're asking, hey, how do we get these in our state? What do we need to do to make sound money viable? Because it used to be, and this is, over 10 years ago in Utah passed the law and then nothing happened. That people didn't go back to using gold and silver coins as money the way my partner thought that they would. We had to actually make a new product that used that law to get a circulating gold currency in the state. And I think now that lawmakers are seeing that there's things that can be done with that, it's generating a lot more excitement for these types of laws, where it used to be that, there was one or two laws like this being passed around the country in a given year. Now we're up to 23. And we have state legislators contacting us, virtually every week, asking how they can get their own gold back in their state.
That's very exciting. It seems like people are kind of waking up to the inherent problems associated with having a fiat currency backed up by nothing. Of course, it's kind of impossible to ignore at this point with the way inflation has driven the price of so much up. You mentioned the legal tender law in Utah there, and that was where you got started with the Goldbacks. Now, I know you have Goldbacks now for 4 states, Wyoming being the latest. You've also got Utah, New Hampshire, and Nevada. Can you tell us a little bit about why you have different Goldbacks for each state and why those states? I mean, what made them appealing as a place to get started with this new gold currency?
Believe it or not, you're one of the first people that ever asked me that question that way. Right? It's like, that's so cool. Utah's doing this. In Utah, it's like, okay, maybe that's a no-brainer. We're the first state to pass a legal tender act in a long time. And that makes sense. But what about New Hampshire and Nevada? Like some people assume this is kind of like a red state, blue state thing, but like those are more purple states, so what's the deal? What's the deal there? Of kind of why those states, but or even why are we doing this at the state level at all? Why not just have a United States Goldback and make it for everybody? Like what's the point of this? So as far as that goes, if you were to make an alternative currency at the federal level, it'd be illegal. There's federal law that prohibits you from making your own money. And, that's really part of where the Liberty dollar ran afoul. I mean, also they were, calling them dollars, and they had all sorts of other issues. But you're not really supposed to make your own money unless otherwise authorized by state law. So every Goldback is really a series of local currencies, and people, sure, they barter with them outside of those states, but we have supported business networks in those states where you can go to goldback.com and you can see, tons of businesses, over 100 businesses in Wyoming or New Hampshire, or I think we're approaching 500 businesses in Utah that advertise themselves as preferring to take Goldbacks, which for context is about 6 businesses in Utah for every 1 business that takes Bitcoin, take Goldbacks. So sound money with Goldbacks tend to be 6 times more popular. That's kind of what I've been saying now lately. So it's gotten popular. People are actually using this. We're actually seeing circulation. But, to your question, why are we going to, Wyoming? Why not, what's special about there? Or better yet, South Dakota. We have South Dakota coming out this year. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and maybe this will make this a little bit more clear. So looking at my screen here, this is a list that's been put out by the Sound Money Defense League. It's called the Sound Money Index. And this is how great each state is with their sound money laws. Now, if you look at this list, it's going to start to look really familiar really quick. Number 1 is Wyoming. Number 2 is South Dakota. Number 4 is New Hampshire. Number 6 is Utah. And number 8 is Nevada. And by the way, Nevada is the number 1 producer of gold in the United States, superseding Alaska. Wow. So what you have here is you have 5 gold-backed states that are taking up these top 8 spots for pro sound money laws. Now, we haven't announced our next state out, past South Dakota, but I'll tell you, it's probably going to be towards the top of this list. I think that, you're really looking at kind of the top 12 states here as candidates, or where you're probably going to see the next Goldback. We have a state sponsorship program where people can sponsor their own states. Really, though, we've gotten interest for almost every state. We want to stay in states that have very friendly jurisdictions to gold, because the state itself could change their laws at the state level, and then we'd have to discontinue the Goldback in those states. So we want to operate in states that are super friendly, to sound money. People speculate, what we're doing next or what the first big state might be, and this list here, might give you some clues in terms of where we're going next.
So it looks like Texas kind of high up on that list. Got the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th spot all tied. And then you got Texas trailing right behind. And like I mentioned, I know they're looking at gold-backed digital currencies even right now. So they seem to be a very friendly jurisdiction to the precious metals in general. And yeah, that seems to make sense.
Well,
Well, that is a good explanation of why you have gone with those particular states. That's pretty impressive, actually, that many businesses in Utah will accept Goldbacks more than Bitcoin, even. For those of us who live in non-Goldback states, I was not aware of that personally. I don't live in any of those Goldback states, and I didn't realize that there was such a wide adoption. But that kind of leads me to another question. What tips would you have for someone who lives in a non-Goldback state for utilizing Goldbacks as an alternative currency?
okay. Before I answer that question, I want to hit something really quick on Texas in particular. So the government-run Texas Bullion Depository last week began accepting Goldbacks. So not only do they sell Goldbacks, they vault them too. So it became a recognized and registered metal with Texas a week ago. So, that's a brand new development for Goldback. And like I said, a lot of people don't know that yet. That'll probably come out, in the news here in a little bit because, we're seeing, a lot of even governmental level interest in the Goldback project coming in from legislators and, government run institutions like the Texas Bullion Repository. As far as what that looks like for you, because Texas doesn't have their own Goldback and, they're still doing that, right? Now, if you live outside of one of these Goldback states and people say, oh, well, Goldback is a great idea and I'd be 100% on board, if I lived in one of those states. Well, I mentioned all the adoption for businesses in Utah, but that's really the tip of the iceberg. We're finding that if you are negotiating with a small business owner in any state in the country, and it varies a little bit depending on state culture, but most states, you're looking at about a 1/3 to 2/3 acceptance rate for gold as payment for goods and services. So if you go to McDonald's, that doesn't help you, but there's a lot of, kind of these smaller mom and pop, places where you can talk to the business owner. And if you're carrying Goldbacks around with you in a Goldback wallet, I've emptied my wallet out of Goldbacks, probably every 2 weeks for the past several years. And most of the places I spend Goldbacks at aren't on any sort of list or places that accept Goldbacks. And I'm in Utah and we have the biggest network here. They're not that hard to spend because, people are inclined to accept an inflation-proof currency, especially in the environment that we're in. So if you live outside of, Utah or New Hampshire or Nevada, you can pick whatever design you like the best in terms of carrying them around. But as a barter item, they do very, very well. And oftentimes you end up introducing sound money and gold ownership to brand new people. Something that has really been understated is that, Goldback and the circulation of Goldbacks has introduced about 750,000 people into precious metals for the very first time over the last 4 years. And for a space where you have kind of this generation aging out, most of these new people coming into gold are young. They're and they're in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and they're getting their very first, taste of gold ownership.
Goldbacks, I think, are probably a great conversation starter in that regard. Kind of a novel item for somebody who's never encountered them before. I mean, most people have probably at least seen or somewhat familiar with like a gold coin or a gold bar, but I think also in people's minds probably there's a bit of a psychological switch that when they see the way that you've presented the gold back as a note, it looks like currency that people are familiar with. The Federal Reserve notes kind of has the same idea. You've got a denominated amount in a numerical form on the bill, so people probably see that and it sort of it's recognizable as money for them. So I think that your point about it being a good way to bring people into learning about gold and silver and sound money, it's probably an excellent tool for that.
Sure. So this is an experiment that I did last year. I went to garage sales in Utah and I brought with me Goldbacks, but I didn't bring Utah Goldbacks. I brought Nevada Goldbacks. So I did one day where I was doing Nevada Goldbacks and one day where I was doing Utah Goldbacks. Utah Goldbacks had a 9 out of 10 acceptance rate at garage sales. So, going to 10 different garage sales, 9 people at the garage sale accepted the Utah Goldback. Do you know what it was for Nevada Goldbacks? Where I didn't say there was a Utah Goldback. I just said, hey, this is a piece of gold. You know, this is just it. The acceptance rate dropped to 8 out of 10. And it wasn't a
Still
scientific
pretty
study
good.
or anything, but my point is, if you're spending these, and you're buying something at a garage sale, where you're talking directly to the person who's, deciding if they, want to get paid in gold for this thing, you're offering gold. I mean, goldbacks are gold, and they have all that visual appeal of gold, if not more so. I mean, look how much surface area you have here. I think that does something emotionally for people where they see the value and they want it. And, then you're hopping on goldback.com, you're using the calculator. And this isn't just for garage sales, it's small businesses. It's seeing the chiropractor, going to the dentist, making that copay. We've got, professionals, contractors. I just had a lot of my flooring redone and I paid for it with Goldbacks. In fact, we bought a truck last year. This is a new truck, and we paid for a substantial part of it with gold. We paid for it with Goldbacks. And that wasn't even, they weren't even on the list, places that took them. There are 2 other car dealerships that are on the list, though. So people are spending Goldbacks not just on small things, not just knickknacks at the farmer's market, but on big things as well.
So I want to get into the Goldbacks themselves a little bit here. I've got some questions for you about them, but before we do that, what's a good resource for like what you were just describing? A list of businesses that will accept Goldbacks. Where can people find this information? So if they want to transact in Goldbacks, where can they find that?
If you're in a Goldback state, you can go to goldback.com and you can find that list and you can try it out. Most people, over 95% of your audience, they're not going to be in a Goldback state. What I would recommend is, we make these wallets. They're designed to fit in your front pocket because they don't bend the Goldbacks. If you carry them around, you'll be shocked at how many opportunities there are to introduce people to precious metals. And even if they don't take payment in Goldbacks, you're still talking to people about what sound money should look like, what inflation-proof money should look like. I pulled one of these out at Costco the other day. I knew they're not going to take it. I mean, it's Costco. I said, hey,
Right.
would you guys, take payment in gold? And the cashier's looking at it and they pull over their coworker and everyone in line is trying to, check it out, kind of, see what's going on. A lady 2 people back from me, and this was fun for me. She pulled a Goldback out of her own wallet. I have one of those too. But they're attention getters, and it's a really great opportunity to educate people. Oh yeah, you could take $100, but who knows what that'll be worth in 5 years. It's like we're playing in musical chairs or hot potato with these things. I mean, the Goldback, they've doubled in price in the last 4 years. They've doubled in value, which is, about on par with what you've seen with gold coins and gold bars. So it's, nobody's lost money doing this so far.
I suspect that as we continue to see inflation become a persistent problem in the economy, probably those conversations are going to become more and more frequent. You're going to encounter more and more people who are becoming familiar with precious metals. The banking crisis that created a huge influx of interest in the precious metals, and I do want to talk about that in just a few minutes. But first, let's talk about Goldbacks versus coins and bars, because if you just want to get the most weight for your money, and I know that that is the objective of many stackers, Goldbacks clearly are not the way to go about that, right? There's a significant premium built into the Goldbacks. When you buy a Goldback, I don't know what the exact current rate is on goldback.com, but I know typically the premium is somewhere around double the spot price if you break down what you're actually paying per ounce. And I mean, that seems exorbitant. Now, I understand that it's a highly fractional form of gold, and that, as you become more fractional, typically you see the premiums rise. That's even the case with coins. If you take a 1/10 ounce gold eagle, you're going to be paying more per ounce than with a 1 ounce gold eagle. But I mean, it seems like Goldbacks, while they have taken fractional gold to a new level, they've kind of taken the premiums to a new level as well. So, and that seems to be a pretty common pushback I get from my audience when I discuss Goldbacks. Now, I kind of find myself middle of the road. I like the Goldbacks for their functionality, but the majority of my precious metals are held in, bars, coins, that sort of thing. But what do you have to say to those who balk at the high premiums on the gold back?
Yeah, that you're absolutely right. That's definitely a very common comment on Goldbacks. You know, something along the lines of, well, they're really cool, and I own a few, and you know, I definitely like them for novelty or as birthday gifts or whatever. But you know, I wouldn't buy a lot of these because you know, woof, that premium, you know, is just really high. And you know, I mean, there's a few different ways that you can approach that. You know, I could say, well, you know, 10th ounce gold eagles right now. I mean, their premium's 50%. You know, and maybe you can get them cheaper. Maybe you can get them for as low as 10%. You know, or you could. But part of the reason why premiums on 10th ounce eagles are so expensive right now is because there's a lot of fear about what's going to happen with the dollar right now. So people are thinking ahead. They're thinking, okay, I want to own gold, but why? Do you want to own gold because you want to have this 1 ounce gold coin, or better yet, a 1 kilo bar so you can take it, take a break from inflation, and then go back to the coin store, get fingerprinted, and pay, you know, your capital gains or whatever, you know, I mean, because that's really the only thing you can do with that gold coin or gold bar. You're probably not going to spend a 1 kilo bar. You're probably not going to spend a 1 ounce gold coin. You know, it's just, it's not a spending thing. It's more of a gold exposure kind of play. And, you know, a lot of these folks, they're buying gold ETFs, you know, for the same thing, you know, don't even deal with physical at all, don't have the liability, don't have the spreads, you know, nothing. So, you know, and this is a story I'll tell you, you know, when COVID hit in March of 2020, I remember shopping at, you know, a Kroger's, and there's kind of this fear, you know, in the atmosphere. You know, you remember, do you remember that? You know,
Oh yeah,
you remember the fear, right? It's just like normal people were scared. You know, the
of
average
course.
person,
Yeah.
not the precious metals guy, not the prepper guy, the average person was nervous. They were freaked out, and people were buying all the toilet paper, they're buying all the water bottles, they're trying to get commodities, they were trying to get anything. And there was this, you know, a little bit of a fear of, well, what's going to happen to our currency? You know, what's going to happen to us, you know, if I can't get the things that I need? Well, you know, goldbacks were out at that time. And I'll tell you what happened. All the retailers, they sold out of goldbacks. And we sold out of goldbacks because we're a wholesaler, and you couldn't buy goldbacks. They become unobtainable except for one place, and that was eBay. And on eBay, they consistently sold. Guess how much they sold for on eBay?
Oh, I'm sure it was a
Like,
bundle.
well, what do you think?
I want to say maybe 3 times the spot price, like a 3x.
Okay, so normally goldbacks sell for double spot price. Okay,
Right.
and you're thinking they did 3x. So we're selling them at the time for like
That's my guess.
two
Yeah.
dollars and 50 cents. They were selling for $50 a piece.
Wow.
Why?
That's
Why?
crazy.
Like what? And I'll tell you
Yeah.
why.
Supply and demand,
Supply
right?
and demand. Well,
Yeah.
there's two halves of the value to a gold back. You have the melt value, and a lot of people that get really fixated on that in the precious metal space were really taught to, you know, get as close to melt as you can. That's where you get your bargain. That's where you get your gold exposure. But when it comes to fractional gold, and the same is true for 10th ounce eagles to a degree, if you're really thinking further ahead in terms of, I want to be able to barter with this, I want to be able to use this, I want to have something that's, you know, I'm not necessarily turning it back into dollars. This is just going to be my money that I'll use because I don't trust $100 bills to keep their value, or 50s or 20s or whatever. The other half of the value in a gold back is the utility value. You know, if you're going to pay to have an ounce of gold split into 1,000 serialized units, I mean, it costs money. I mean, it really does.
That's a significant undertaking.
It's
Yeah.
well, it's a technological marvel. I mean, if you mint a 10th ounce gold coin, you're paying, you know, $30-$40 per unit. We're doing these for, you know, closer to $1 a unit. You know,
Wow.
so I mean, sure, there's a premium, but that utility value, that second half, in a crisis, in a pinch, when there's dollar concerns, when there's, you know, currency concerns, that utility value appreciates dramatically more than the gold value does. It's not a black hole. It's not a sunk cost you throw your money into. It's the best part of a gold back. And we've seen that. We've proved it with COVID. We're seeing it now. If you hop on, you know, moneymetals.com, and they're one of the, you know, the biggest bullion dealers, you know, Their average rate for a Goldback is well over $4. It's over 100%. And they just do that to keep Goldbacks in stock because there's demand for these things as money. Um, if you think about it, what makes all of our $100 bills valuable? Is it the melt value or the utility demand? Where does all that demand
Right. Yeah.
go?
There's no melt
There's
value. The
no melt
dollar's
value.
valued solely for
It's
its
only
utility. Yeah,
utility
that makes
value.
sense.
That's why you own $100 bills. That's why you stack $100 bills, by the way. It's because they have utility value. That's why I have $100 bills. They have a utility value for now. When that utility value goes down in $100 bills, that demand has to go somewhere. It's not going to go to 1 ounce coins and 1 ounce bars. What we've seen in the past when Goldbacks were new and they've only been out for 9 months is they hit that demand hit Goldbacks so hard that they were $50 a piece. That's
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 incredible.
why we're seeing people buying six figures amounts of Goldbacks. That's why we see people turning in their bars and coins. That's kind of a maximalist argument. Like at first, when I started Goldbacks, what I told people was, oh, yeah, own some Goldbacks to barter with, but if you want gold exposure, have gold coins. What we've seen over the last 4 years is gold coins and bars, they've gone up 70, 80%. Goldbacks, they've gone up in price over 100%. They're outperforming
It makes a
bars.
lot of sense. We've also seen that in the other areas of the precious metals, like with junk
Yeah,
silver, for example. And it's
absolutely.
kind of a similar situation. It's a highly fractional form of the precious metal, it's very recognizable. And with junk silver, there's a limited supply. And the same thing goes for goldbacks. I know you're continuing to produce them. So at least it is an expanding supply, unlike the supply of junk silver, but still the supply of goldbacks is a lot more limited than say your 1 ounce gold coins, which there's quite a bit of out there, or gold bars, right? Yeah, so that makes sense, especially from the standpoint of the utility demand. That's why and I think a lot of other stackers like silver so much, because it's kind of more suited towards day-to-day transactions. And that's why for the great majority of human history, I think silver has been the money of choice, but you've kind of turned gold into an option for that as well with the technology, like you say, with being able to turn an ounce of a gold into 1,000 divisible units, which is something, in the past that would have been impossible. So it's very interesting that there is that utility value behind goldbacks. And I expect that to be something that probably continues again as we go into the future. I have some family that lived through the Venezuelan hyperinflation and like in-laws,
Or
and some of them are still there. And having precious metals certainly was a boon to them. But typically, what they were doing was they were taking the metals and selling them and getting US dollars and then using the dollars for transactions. But my point has always been as a stacker and, as somebody who likes things like goldbacks and junk silver and fractional precious metals, is that's fine if you're in Venezuela and the Bolivar hyperinflates, then you just, sell your metals for dollars and transact in that. But what do you do when the dollar is the currency that's going through a massive inflation, right? What's the fallback currency there? There is no other world reserve currency except for the ones that we've used historically and that mankind has always fallen back to, the gold and silver. And I think that this time around, we probably are going to see an increase in the utilization of tools like goldbacks. I mean, I don't think it's going to be limited to exclusively goldbacks, but they probably will play a role in the future moving forward. You've got the quote, gold is money, everything else is credit. That's from J.P. Morgan. He said that in 1912. I believe that was in congressional testimony. He doesn't mention silver there. That's the first thing I want to bring everybody's attention to. So I want to get your take on that, silver's role along with gold. I think you guys have some silverbacks out there, but it's more of a, small project for the time being. But what do you think about that idea of gold being the ultimate money, everything else just being credit, and what does silver's role play in all of this?
okay, just for starters, I'm a huge silver bull. I was introduced to precious metals and I couldn't afford gold coins. They were 2 grand a piece. So I bought silver and I understand the argument for silver. I understand, the price manipulation and the ETFs. And, if you really study it, if you look at above ground reserves of silver and gold, did you know that there are more ounces of gold on the market available than ounces of silver? I mean, you probably know that. I mean, you probably can't not know that being in this space, you
Absolutely.
know? So it's like, you know, the upward potential on silver is absolutely enormous. You know, I truly believe in silver as a dramatically undervalued, suppressed industrial metal. In fact, I think that it's, you know, if you follow Mike Maloney, you know, he argues that, you know, we could see a 1-to-1 at some point for silver to gold. You know, that there could be a correction that big with silver that's still building up. He was saying that 10 years ago. I mean, that could be true. And I actually own a substantial amount of silver. Now, I'm not trying to think about just today. I'm trying to plan ahead. I'm trying to plan ahead 5 years, 10 years down the road. All right. Now, if you know that there's 3 ounces of gold for every 1 ounce of silver above ground, why would you build an economic system that undervalues silver? That doesn't make any sense. In fact, if I have silver coins to barter with, what am I going to barter with when silver is far too valuable to barter with?
That's a very interesting
So it's
point.
like, silver, again, it's an undervalued industrial metal. I plan on turning in my silver someday for goldbacks when the silver to goldback ratio changes, right? You know, I think, you know, and again, goldbacks might be really high because of that utility jump. So I own goldbacks instead of gold coins. I used to have, you know, dozens of gold coins. All of them are goldbacks now. So no, as far as silver goes, I don't think that there is a future for silver as coinage that's subservient to gold. I think the industrial demand for silver is too high. You're seeing over 80% of silver being used in industry and solar panels. In fact, you know, the bill that you mentioned, to go back to the gold standard has a real problem that, you know, we don't really talk about. And that's that we never had a gold standard. You know, we had a 100 copper pennies is equal to $1 silver, and 20 silver dollars is equal to one gold piece. It was a tri-metal system. And it was a tri-metal system for 2,500 years. 99% of our copper is used in industry. Over 80% of our silver is used in industry. In fact, silver is so used in industry right now that, you know, they're melting down old silver coins and they're trying to find more silver to, again, make solar panels and electronics and, you know, everything else they use silver for. It's part of why I buy silver.
Yeah, electric
Sure,
vehicles.
electric vehicle. I mean, like, these things take a lot of silver. You're not going to go back to a money system where you have the government force pegging 3 industrial metals together under the penalty of death. The only metal left standing is gold. If you took all the cash in the world today, it's about the same value as all the gold reserves in the world. If you took all the gold reserves that are held by central banks today and you turned them into goldbacks, you could replace all the cash in the world today. The same is not true for silver. It's just,
yeah, there's just not
there's
enough.
not enough. Now, that said, I think there is a future for silver as money, but I think it's going to happen in the form of like a silverback. I think silverback itself will be a viable currency that's just as good or almost as good as goldbacks, you know, in the next, you know, 3 to 5 years. The reason why we did silverbacks now is more of a novelty. It's more of a kind of a gimmick, you know, a collectible, you know, limited edition collectible. Well, let's say that I made a silverback. I said, okay, you know, silverback, it's 1,000th of an ounce. It's got a melt value of 3 cents. And I'm going to sell it for $1. What would be your better bargain, a dollar bill or a silverback? In fact,
That's a tough call.
It's a tough call. But here's the thing: it's not.
I always like silver,
it's
but
not even. It's not even controversial. And I'll tell you why. You go into any coin store in the country, okay? They're going to sell you copper rounds. What does a copper round cost?
Oh, they're quite a bit over the spot price. I know. I think they sell for, you know, $1 or $2, which when you're talking about, you know, pounds of silver being worth a few bucks, yeah, it's a huge markup.
They sell for like $4. In fact,
Wow.
I called one of these coin stores last year because you know, this is just kind of market research. But then I asked them, I said, okay, well, what if I want to barter? You know, like, let's say it's a crisis and I just want to like trade with precious metals. I can't trade with an ounce of gold. You guys don't sell goldbacks. What do you have for me? Oh, we have these copper rounds. You'd love them. It's like, I could buy like $10,000 worth. Oh, absolutely. Well, cool. Well,
Oh,
what do they cost? Oh, they're like $4 a piece. Okay. Oh, that's okay. That sounds fair. What's the melt value? Oh, well, like 20 cents. Why would I pay
wow.
$4? Well, okay. Well, if you think about it, I mean, there's a lot of cost that goes into manufacturing. I mean, it costs just as much to make a copper round as a silver or a gold round, and like we can't do this for free. I mean, there has to be a markup, and just think of the utility value. I mean, having a copper round that's worth $4, even though it's worth 20 cents, you could probably trade it for $4.
If you find another sucker,
I'm like, well, wait a minute, And I said, well, what about why didn't you sell Goldbacks then? Oh, well, they barely have any gold in them. So I just kept walking them through. I'm like, okay, if we're on the website, and we figured out that at the time Goldbacks had an 80% premium. All right. So it's like Goldbacks have an 80% premium, and your copper rounds have like a 1,500, 1,600, 2,000% premium, something like that. You won't sell something that has an 80% premium, but you'll sell something that has a 2,000% premium. Like, why? Oh, well, my boss just says he doesn't want to deal with Goldbacks. Like, okay, that's more honest. So
not to mention that if you just go to the bank, you can get a box of U.S. nickels for $100, and they've got about $126 worth of nickel and copper metal within them, the melt values, or pre-1982 pennies.
yeah,
They're out there in circulation. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of copper bullion in general. I do like my nickels and my old pennies, but yeah, that's interesting. It's something that I witness whenever I cover Goldbacks. There just seem to be a bit of a pushback. It's I call it the most polarizing bullion item out there. It seems like it's a very polarizing item to me. I mean, some people love them. I mean, I myself, I like Goldbacks. I think that there's a use case for them. But the premiums, and then there's a few other issues that people seem to bring up a lot. One is there seems to be a misconception out there, and I'm pretty sure this one is a misconception, that it's not possible to verify the amount of gold. And I don't know why this always comes up in the comments, but I know that there are some security features built into the Goldbacks. And also, I mean, if you melt a Goldback, I wouldn't want to do it because you'd be destroying some of that utility value, like you say. But I mean, you can remove the gold from them, correct? I mean,
yeah,
maybe you can go into a little bit of that.
absolutely. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to. And again, a lot of people get hung up on that because as soon as you destroy your Goldback, you lost half your value. I mean, what would you rather barter with? Something that has a weight stamped on it and a serial number, something that's never been counterfeited, something that's very flashy and appealing, or like a little BB that is basically a tiny piece of gold shot that nobody knows what it is, nobody knows the purity, you know. So there's that. But in terms of authenticating a Goldback, all Goldbacks are authenticated by a third party. Same type of assay companies that do assays for like mines and things like that. Every batch coming out of the manufacturer is assayed and checked. And we can actually share those assay reports with people and say, hey, you know, we verify, we make sure 100% of the gold is in here. In fact, when Goldbacks were newer and before the technology was as refined, Goldbacks actually had about 5% more gold in them than we claimed, just to be 100% sure that nothing ever came in underweight. And I want to say that we're still about 2% heavy on Goldbacks because we never want to be short. So yeah, you can totally if you want to
Absolutely.
make a ring or something, you can totally recover your gold out of a Goldback, but don't buy gold for the purpose of melting it down and crafting something with Goldbacks. Yeah, that's not
Right.
your best value. And to get what you're saying about the polarizing effect of Goldbacks is actually super interesting. We've researched it a little bit. Younger people under the age of 45, so millennials, most people that own Goldbacks are under the age of 45. Like in terms of sheer numbers. And for precious metals, that's totally unprecedented. If you're 45 in precious metals, you're a young guy.
When I look at the statistics for my channel, I know the majority of my audience is over 45, certainly. Although I do think that we may have a resurgence in interest in this new generation. I think we're already beginning to see that.
Well, we are, but I'll tell you what. So the incoming director to the US Mint was told that the goal, and this is for gold eagles, right? They make gold eagles. Their goal was to only lose 250,000 customers a year. And that's crazy. I mean, that's insane. Like, well, why is that our goal? Like, well, the generation that owns the most gold, keep in mind these things are $2,000 a piece. It's the silent generation. It's the generation older than baby boomers, and they're aging out. Baby boomers don't buy as much gold as their parents did. And that's even more true for Gen X, and it's even more true for millennials, and it's even more true for Gen Z. And part of that is the affordability issue, but you also have these older generations that are more connected to precious metals because it used to circulate. It's more part of their DNA. It's more part of their story, and that's a real danger to the space. We've lost half our coin stores in Utah in the last 15 years. It's a combination of a shrinking market for numismatics. It's a combination of, older coin store owners that are part of that generation aging out and retiring. So, when I tell you that we've added 750,000 people into the precious metal space in the last 4 years, and that most of those people are young, we have people that are older, they're giving these to their nieces and nephews and children and grandchildren as gifts, and they're introducing them to precious metals for the very first time. And it's an affordable way to do it. For the very first time, your kids can own gold. That's never been true. And own gold, not just in a tiny coin that's going to get lost or a tiny silver dime that looks just like all the other silver dimes. You sound like a crackpot trying to explain why it's a different silver dime, I mean, like,
Right.
don't lose this one. This one's special, like, I know it's made out of a different it's like, you break,
Yeah, well, I think that was intentional, right? When they switched the silver out of the currency to try to keep them looking the
It's
same.
still
That's why they
intentional.
took the copper token.
They're still doing it.
And they put nickel on it.
Do dimes still have the same design today? Yeah,
Yep, they have not changed
it's on
them.
purpose. They don't.
Absolutely.
It was absolutely on purpose. They didn't want Gresham's law. They didn't want to mess. They didn't want him to have it be a different thing. And Goldbacks
Yeah,
again.
try to make that as smooth as possible.
So a lot of like the polarization, some of it at least. And this isn't true for everyone over 45. It's certainly not. But you're like something like 2 or 3 times more likely to be excited about buying a lot of Goldbacks if you're under the age of 45. It's something newer. It's something, it's a new, it's not like your grandpa's traditional gold, right? That's not to say that
it's the new wave.
It's a new wave. So, and that's really encouraging for us because, we plan on doing this for a long time. But, a lot of the older folks that do get it, they're introducing it to a lot of younger people. And that's we're going to keep carrying the torch of precious metals.
That's fantastic. It's a good mission. And you're doing a service absolutely by raising awareness about sound money. Now, one of the things that's driving a lot of this interest is the banking crisis that we're currently experiencing. In March, we saw SVB and Signature Bank kick off. We just had First Republic Bank get acquired by JP Morgan. So it seems like, there's more banks potentially on the chopping blocks here, and it's driving a lot of interest. We've got Google Trends. The search for how to buy gold was at a record high or near record high in April. I know ST Bullion, they're another channel sponsor. They had a huge influx of orders following the crisis. They had to set up a minimum order. They had a long shipping backlog, and they're just kind of working their way out of that. So what was it like over at Goldback? Have you seen a similar surge in interest in the product that you've got there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if you were to add up every Goldback that had ever been sold and the value of them at the end of last year, we've sold maybe $50 million worth of Goldbacks. So again, there's over 1 million people that own Goldbacks. We've got, we've sold $50 million worth. Well, going into 2023, in March, when we started seeing the news on Silicon Valley Bank, we sold over $6 million worth of Goldbacks in March. Wow. And we did it again in April. And the only reason we didn't sell more is because we ran out. We had distributors coming to us saying, hey, we need more Goldbacks. And we're over here like, sorry, we're out. And, we kind of stopped talking about them to a big degree. There's a reason why we don't have like a much bigger social media presence, is because we've never put the investment into it. We've sold every Goldback that we could feasibly manufacture for the last 4 years. So everything that we're doing, we're trying to scale up. We're trying to make it so Goldbacks are more available because the market demand is there. If I were to push Goldbacks, if I were to make some of these arguments, you know, I've been invited by, people that are much bigger, some really big names that want to talk about Goldbacks, and we're not ready yet. If somebody came to me today and they wanted to buy $1 million worth of Goldbacks, I'd have to like push them towards doing like a lease, through Alpine Gold, because Alpine Gold, they actually lease out Goldbacks. You can make a return on your Goldbacks to help us with our inventory needs. They're one of the big distributors for Goldbacks.
Let's talk about that. I've always purchased Goldbacks myself through traditional bullion dealers, SD Bullion and others, online dealers primarily. But there is this other way to acquire Goldbacks. You've got kind of your own Goldback ecosystem with Alpine Gold Exchange, who is the sponsor of this video, just for full disclosure for everybody watching. But tell me about Alpine Gold Exchange. I know I have kind of a surface level understanding. There's some very interesting features there, like you have a zero bid ask spread, which is quite unique. You offer some storage solutions, like you mentioned. There's the ability to lease out your Goldbacks and get a return, which is something that is, yield on precious metals, kind of a difficult thing to achieve. So tell me about that and how all of that works.
Sure. And just a quick disclaimer. So Goldback itself is a wholesaler. We sell to lots of different distributors, like APMEX and JM Bullion and Money Metals and Finest Known. And, Goldback itself doesn't take a position on where you should buy from. We have a list of different businesses. Right now, Alpine Gold is at the top of that list. And they are an important part of the Goldback ecosystem. So I just want to have that disclaimer. I'm not like an Alpine Gold, spokesperson or anything.
Absolutely.
But that said, something that's really interesting about Alpine Gold's business model is they're a vaulting company. So if you came in and you bought $20,000 worth of Goldbacks, you could do that through their e-commerce site, but you could also vault them at Alpine Gold. And one, they'll vault them for free. The fact that, and they're our main vaulting partner. So the fact that there's 20 different Goldbacks out there, you consider 5 different denominations for 4 different states. They vault about $2 million worth of Goldbacks that we can like go to them and say, hey, we have demand for this particular Goldback. Can we swap it out of your vault? Goldback actually pays your vaulting fees for that convenience, in essence, if you're vaulting gold at Alpine Gold. So not only, and to my knowledge, there's never been a free gold vaulting experience, really.
I've never encountered one myself.
So you have that. Yes, you can vault Goldbacks for free at Alpine Gold. They're the cheapest Goldbacks that you can get. But something that really distinguishes Alpine Gold from, our other dealers is they offer Goldback leases. So normally if you go and you buy precious metals, you're paying someone to protect it for you. And you're kind of whittling away your pile a little bit in terms of vaulting. Yeah, you can keep it yourself too, I guess. Warren Buffett's criticism of gold is that you pay a fortune to get it out of the earth, and then you have to pay a fortune to store it and put it back in the earth somewhere. But it's not really working for you. And I think he misses the point because gold is money, right? It's not like, something that's supposed to get a return. It's supposed to just be inflation proof. But with Goldback leases, you can get a return. So what you're doing is you're buying a giant pile of Goldbacks, you're lending it to Goldback Inc., which is our company here. We use it to make more Goldbacks, and in exchange for that privilege, we'll pay you a return in Goldbacks. So there's people that own gold and they're making a 3.5% return on their gold.
Wow.
So they have a growing pile of gold. And I want to say there's something like $20 million worth of gold in that program right now. And part of the reason why we didn't run out of gold in March and April, we kind of did run out of Goldbacks, but the reason why it wasn't worse than that is because we've had so many people participating in this lease program that lets us get, gold out to so many more people. So, that's the other thing you can do at Alpine Gold is you can actually get a return on your Goldbacks, so free vaulting, or you can get a 2% return, 2 to 3.5%. and then they're affordable as well. So that's, I guess that's the best thing I could say about Alpine Gold.
It's very smart the way you've set up this ecosystem for Goldbacks, because also I know the zero bid ask spread. So just to break that down for those watching, that means that if you've got an account in Alpine Gold, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can buy your Goldbacks, they vault them, and then you can sell them back at any time. And the difference between the price at which they're bought and sold, there is no difference, which is, again, unusual. And this kind of is, I think, a point that makes me a little less concerned about the premium issue, because you can get the premium back as soon as you sell it. It's not like buying a high premium numismatic coin and then you go to sell it and you instantly take a haircut on it, or something like that. So there is that zero bid ask spread, which I think is a very interesting.
That's actually a really big, yeah, that's a big deal. And I should have mentioned that. If you go to a local coin dealer, and not to rip on local coin dealers, a lot of them sell Goldbacks, and some of them sell them, they kind of treat them like they would copper rounds. It's like, hey, we're going to sell the Goldback for $6. We're going to try to make, $2.50 on it or whatever. And why not? And they'll sell them and they move. But if you come back to that same dealer and try to sell them back your Goldback, they'll pay you $3 for it. And that's where people really get hurt with Goldbacks, is on their bid ask spreads with local coin dealers. There are a few online dealers, like Defy the Grid is one of them. Alpine Gold is another, where, Alpine Gold, they have a zero spread for your first $10,000 in 30 days. And that's great if you have a lease. If you go beyond that, the spread's 5%. And that's actually a tighter spread than you can get on silver. That's about the spread you're looking at with gold coins. So you're not losing going in and out of Goldbacks. So if you bought Goldbacks from Alpine Gold, say in 2019 when we started, all right, you paid $2 for your Goldbacks and you put them into a lease. Let's say you put $50,000 worth of Goldbacks into a lease. You got 25,000 Goldbacks in there. Fast forwarding to today, you would have more than 10%. You'd have like 15% more gold. Oh, and they'd be worth twice as much.
Yeah, pretty good return.
That's pretty good return. So you have more gold total, and you have twice as much gold. So, the Goldback.
Yeah, both in ounces and fiat value.
And both ounces and fiat value. You have more total gold, and the value has gone up. And again, that's what we didn't really know when we started Goldback. I thought that people shouldn't buy large amounts because, they weren't going to have that same gold exposure. And again, Goldbacks went up in price by over 100% for average price during the same time period that coins and bars did 80. And again, it's because that utility half of the value of the Goldback has more appreciation potential than the gold half. And that was the big surprise. And again, if the utility perception of dollars go down, that demand goes somewhere. This is the most high-tech commodity currency in human history. It's not even close. This is vacuum deposition. This isn't foil. These have never been counterfeited. And, what do you want out of your money? Do you want some $2,000 gold coin that might be fake from China? Or do you want something that you can spend 1,000 times? And that's
Absolutely.
Really where we're seeing, that increase in price. It's just supply and demand.
Yeah. As a hard money circulating currency, it seems like a new generation, a new, giant leap forward in technology. Absolutely. And it's interesting to see how technology will impact the use of precious metals here in the 21st century. You've got physical Goldbacks, you've got digital gold currencies potentially. So we're seeing that happen as this plays out in this decade and in this new century. Well, this, it always goes a little longer than I expect, these calls, because once you start talking about precious metals, if it's something you're passionate about, we could probably
we could be here all day. I just
we
don't
could
know
go
if
all
your
day.
audience can.
Yeah, exactly. So before we wrap it up, and I do just want to mention, there is going to be a link to Alpine Gold Exchange in the description of this video. It will be an affiliate link, so anybody who uses that link, it is a way that you can support this channel at no additional cost to you. So if anybody does that, thank you in advance. And before we wrap things up, Jeremy, just tell everybody where they can get more information from you, from Goldback Inc. and from Alpine Gold Exchange. Anywhere on social media or the interwebs that you'd like to direct people to.
You know, if you go to goldback.com, that's going to be your best source. A lot of our people, I mean, you know, you could hop on Facebook. I mean, I found out the other day that there's a Reddit page for Goldback, which surprised me. It's like there's like a whole community. You guys just got together and started doing this, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's where I learned that we need to have a mintage page for Goldbacks. We gotta have a mintage page for Goldbacks. But no, I mean that's you know, I think that you're going to see more communities, you know, popping up in Telegram and on Slack. You know, we want to get people together that are in states that don't have Goldbacks yet. We have people reaching out to us almost every day. Hey, when do you have a Goldback in Texas? You know, when are you going to be in Idaho? When are you going to be in Arkansas? You know, and we want to get all these people together so they can, you know, sign up these business networks and work together to, you know, get those Goldbacks there. So we're definitely looking at, you know, building up more support there and more communities to support the grassroots movement for sound money. And that's really what Goldbacks is I'd say it's the most serious grassroots private sector sound money movement we've had in the last 50 years. And by far, you know, as far as the local currency goes, Goldbacks are the #1 most successful local currency in American history. So, you know, we're very proud of what we're doing. And, you know, I think we're just getting started.
It's fantastic. And it's good to see this awareness of precious metals coming about. It's kind of a bright spot in a somewhat gloomy economic picture that we are witnessing at the moment. So you're doing good work over there at Goldback. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for joining us today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. We'll have to do it again sometime soon. And to everybody watching out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe and happy stacking, everybody. And I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker out.